Hello everybody, Dragon47 here. How are you all today? So, this is the first ever episode of us diving into Pokemon Go's PvP system. Now, I do not take credit for any of the images or anything of this type of stuff on the screen, just so that I don't get copyright striked or anything. As of the current moment, we're just going to dive straight on in to this meta list, but before we do that, I'm going to give you 5 reasons as to why you would want to pick up PvP, because I feel like a lot of people don't actually know the full-on benefits of actually playing PvP as opposed to just not doing it at all. So the first reason why I highly suggest you should pick up PvP, Stardust. Stardust is the most efficient way to gain Stardust in the game. By battling people, you can collect over 2,000 Stardust for every 5 battles you beat, not including the Stardust that you get for every 10 battles for the research that they've been handing out for the past while now, to gain even more Stardust. And 1,000 Stardust is like the equivalent of catching 10 Pokemon. So you really do build up Stardust incredibly fast just by doing PvP. Pop a star piece and you can make a lot of it. And that Stardust can then further be used to power up Pokemon, to make good raid attackers and make good PvP mons and just make your stuff in your collection look nice. And then you can also give them second moves based off of the amount of Stardust and candies that you have to make your Pokemon stronger. I believe the second reason why you'd want to do it is because of the exclusive encounters, right? So some people do know, some people don't know. Once you hit rank 20, you have a chance of seeing legendary Pokemon that is currently in raids as of the time you are battling. So, like, by the time I'm recording this video, Nilingo is the 5-star raid Pokemon right now, right? Yes, okay, good. And if you were, theoretically, in rank 20 and beat 3 battles, that third Pokemon, or that after you get that third win, you get a random encounter. And if you're a rank 20 or higher, there's a good chance that random encounter could potentially be Nilingo, which is super cool and super huge, especially if you don't have access to raid groups of your own, because if you don't have raid groups and you're like in a rural area but you still want to be catching legendary Pokemon, this technically isn't a great alternative, but it is an alternative to getting legendaries on your own through the means of PvP, as opposed to going out and actually raiding them. There's also exclusive Pokemon in there that you can get, like Phalanx and Hisuian Sneasel and all sorts of other cool stuff that you normally would have a harder time getting if you didn't do PvP. Next thing would probably be the rewards. Like I said, technically the Pokemon encounters are part of the rewards, which is kind of cool, but you also get like TMs, HMs, evolution items like Sunstones, Sinnohstones, and Metal Coats. Those can be kind of difficult to get at times. You can get rare candies from this, and rare candies is an extremely expensive resource for most of the game, because you want to get those rare candies to power up and make those legendary Pokemon viable, right? That's just kind of what you want to end game go for. I suppose the fourth reason is familiarization. That's what I'm tagging it, because I don't really know what else I'm going to tag this for. It's just so you can learn, right? The whole point of this is to have fun with your Pokemon in battle and learn your typing matchups through this. You also can take the time to learn what certain moves do, learn why some moves are better than others, and you can honestly learn a lot just by sitting around and playing Pokemon Go PvP for a little while. You'd be surprised at how strong your memory gets and how, certain matchups work and things like that. It's actually kind of crazy. And I suppose the fifth and final thing is it gives you a new aspect of the game to play around with. You're out catching Pokemon all the time. What happens when you complete the Pokedex? What happens when you complete the Shiny Dex? For some of us, that's just it. That's just the end of the game. But what do you do with all your Pokemon after you've collected them all? One of the best things I could suggest is just go battle with them, right? To go out and brawl. And personally, I just think that through my experience of being someone who was not completely against PvP at first, after I had played it a little bit, I had come to learn that I had actually learned to love it. And the further on I go, I realized that, yeah, this is definitely a thing that could potentially be big. And I know that there's an esports for it now, so that's kind of another cool thing about this that makes it more, gives you a further drive to even play, to keep going. And I know by the time I'm recording this, Great League is not currently around, but I will say that Great League will be coming back, and the meta probably won't change super much unless they do a change in the meta beforehand, but that is very rare, and I highly doubt it. And speaking of meta, what is meta? So the definition term and gamer slang, as people call it. Meta, for those of you who don't know, is a way of determining weapons characters, or in this case, Pokemon, that are the best of the best. Now, granted, any Pokemon can be decent or even have a great time in PvP, but some Pokemon just have an easier time in matchups than others, and have higher win percentages as of a result of that. An example of the current meta is kind of what we have up on the screen. Personally, I will be moving a few of these Pokemon around based off of my experience as it so far. I only managed to get to rank 20 so far in the first half because I slacked and I wasn't paying attention to how long the Great League was going to be sitting around. But I am just under the elo bar of Ace, and I will be trying to push for Expert, if not Masters, here in the near future. But before I'm allowed to do that, I gotta, get that elo up and start using some team comps that are actually good. We'll get into team comps in further videos, but for this part, let's just talk about good Pokemon. So up in the S tier category, we got Registeel and Galarian Stunfisk. These two are like the two Steel boys. They're really, really good, really, really tanky. Registeel does so much damage, and Galarian Stunfisk just does so much good for the meta. It's actually kind of insane. Then we have the two counter users. We have Scrafty and Medicham. I know people have had a lot of success with Scrafty, and if you comp him correctly, he is a menace to behold. Personally, I don't know if he deserves to be in the S tier slot. I kind of think that he maybe needs to go down into A, but that is, again, just my opinion. I haven't done a whole lot with Scrafty, mainly because I don't have a really, really good one, but I do plan on tinkering and messing around with Scrafty here in the near future. And Medicham is just broken. Medicham is so good this meta. He is just ran in every team comp if you have space for him. His moveset is super diverse. He gains a lot of energy. He has good bulk. He's just so strong. That goes kind of same for Swampert. If you're not running Medicham, then you're more than likely going to see a Swampert somewhere. Water is a huge factor in this meta, and Swampert having Hydro Cannon and having two of the best types in the game put onto one Pokemon, being ground and water, just makes him such a good Pokemon. He really is a menace to behold. And even if you run into the Shadow one, which Shadows give you a 20% plus to attack and a minus 20% to defense, for those of you who did not know, he is still so good in Shadow form. That just makes him win matchups that normally he wouldn't win, which makes him particularly even better. Both Swamperts are good. You can't run both. They have the same number. That's how they do that, by the way, for those of you who are interested in learning how they do that. But he's still a very strong Pokemon. That goes same for these other water boys that we have over here. We have Pelipper. Pelipper is really, really good. A lot of people lead him more than half the time. I know I for sure lead him. He provides a lot of neutral stab. He builds up energy really, really good, and just in general is a really top Pokemon. He will mess other things up. You got to keep him away from a lot of the other bulkier flyers, though, because he tends to not do super hot into those types of matchups. And then there's Lantern. Lantern's just kind of always been good. An electric water type kind of just is good due to the fact that it's one of its... water is weak to electricity, right? But seeing as it is electric, it just doesn't even compute with Lantern. It makes him such a good Pokemon. In the A tier, we have Leaky Tongue. Leaky Tongue is really good because it has Power Whip and Body Slam. Those two are such good moves for this bulky mon. Like, Body Slam you can just spam, right? That's the spam button for neutral damage or shield baiting. And Power Whip is good because Grass-type Pokemon aren't really good in the Great League for the most part, unless your name's Shadow Victreebel, which I'll get to here in a minute. But having Power Whip on Lickitung is huge because it helps him defeat a lot of the water matchups that are here in the meta as of the current moment. It helps him win against things like Swampert, Lantern, can help him win against Quagsire. It's actually kind of crazy how good Power Whip is. Then we go to Bastiodon. Bastiodon's really good because he walls flyers, and flyers are another huge part of the meta. Not nearly as huge as it was last meta. I definitely think we went way heavily more into water and ice orient this meta as opposed to the last meta, which was all flyers. But he's still really, really good due to the fact that he has Flamethrower. Flamethrower is just a good move for decent damage. He's really tanky, really bulky, and he wins a lot of matchups just by out-sustaining most people. Then we go over here into Quagsire. Quagsire is good because he has Stone Edge. He's kind of like Swampert in a sense, but instead of being water and ground, you're using him for ground and stone. And the reason for that is because he doesn't have a super great water move on lock like that, like Swampert does, but he has Stone Edge, which is a really, really, really good rock type attack. And it can actually destroy most flyers, which is kind of surprising. And Mud Bomb obviously makes it... Him getting the buff of Mud Bomb from last patch is honestly really good too. Noctowl is there. Noctowl definitely did see a decrease. Like last season, I would have put him in the S tier because of how good he was. But I'm definitely seeing less and less of him. And for that reason, he's going to go down into A tier. He's bulky. He provides a lot of good stab. And frankly, he, in general, is just good. Like, he can technically deal with Medicham. He can deal with Pelipper. He can win those matchups. It's just rough because there's a lot of ice users in the meta as of the moment. And his main counter, which is Trevenant, and we'll get to that in a minute, also got nerfed to the absolute ground. So he's just not there. Not existent as much as he used to be. Maybe other people are seeing him, but I'm not seeing him. Trevenant is just kind of out of the meta, in my opinion. Then we have Whiscash. Whiscash is kind of like that trio of Swampert and Quagsire. He's a lot more budget-friendly, though, I've come to learn, if you don't have those two, because you need an Elite TM for Swampert, right, for Hydro Cannon. And Quagsire isn't a Pokemon I don't see all the time. Granted, I wasn't actively hunting for it, so I never really would know. He has Blizzard. He kind of provides the ice, whereas the other two, one provides stone and water, the other one's ground and water, and then the last one is, this one's ice and ground, so he kind of just helps deal with a bunch of the flyers, which is really good, but at the same time, you know, his stats is just, in general, lower than the other two. Still a solid Pokemon, definitely worth running if you have one, but, you know, maybe if you have Swampert, it'd probably be a better option to run that. Shadow Machamp. Now, the reason we're talking about Shadow Machamp is because it has a huge amount of DPS and a very small amount of defense. That's okay, though, because with its massive amounts of attack, it can shred things like Lickitung, Galarian Stunfisk, Registeel. It can win a lot of matchups that abnormally other fighters would fail to win at. And it having Rock Slide even potentially throws a threat at flyers, which is kind of crazy. Double is good. It has Body Slam. It has Double Kick. Some people run Wild Charge. It just has a lot of good moves on it. That's the main reason why people run it, is because it just has a lot of good moves. It really just depends on what your preference is. Sableye. So Sableye has kind of become the new Trevenant in a sense, right? Because Trevenant got nerfed last patch, and Trevenant just isn't really that good anymore. And for that reason, we kind of have Sableye to take his place. Sableye domes Medicham. He has neutral matchup against Swampert. He has pretty good matchup against other sorts of things too, like Galarian Stunfisk. He does pretty decent into, not necessarily a bad matchup, not necessarily a great one. He just is a solid Pokemon in general. He's like the anti-meta. That, and to be perfectly honest, every time I see him, I see a very corrupted version of Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. I don't know why, I just do. It just kind of reminds me of an evil Stitch. Then we have Altaria. Altaria has always been good. It's been getting slowly, progressively worse and worse as the metas have gone on. I still think it's a really solid Pokemon. It still has a lot of defense, has a lot of bulk, provides a good amount of damage. I just don't think that at the current moment the meta is like super dependent on it. You can run it and get away with it, like with a Galarian Stunfisk, I'd say, because like the Altaria Galarian Stunfisk core is good, right? It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. It still poses a threat. It's just not as consistent as it once used to be. And that kind of goes same for Walrein. Walrein over here has been doing super good stuff. Definitely got better from the last patch because he's also a Pokemon that's been kind of on the brink of meta. Then they kind of nerfed him to get rid of him because he was really, really strong for too long. And then they kind of just brought him back now with the idea of buffing Icicle Spear to try and get him a little bit more back into the meta of things. And I've seen a lot of people run Walrein as well. It really does output a lot of damage. Now, over here in the other options category, these ones are just decent. The first one that I wanted to pick out right away, out the gate, is Dugong. I personally think we need to move Dugong from that box over there into the B tier, due to the simple fact that Dugong is just so good. The drill run buff for it was insane. And on top of that, it having good ice types, neutral stab, is just so strong on a water ice type Pokemon. Like, oh my goodness, the amount of Dugong players I've ran into. That is particularly the reason why I decided to run Registeel this patch, is because I knew there would be a lot of people running both Alolan Sandslash and Dugong, and I have, in fact, seen both of them run together. Because Alolan Sandslash over here, kind of like Dugong, also got Drill Run. Is it quite as good as Dugong? Personally, I don't think so. I think out of the two, Dugong is slightly better than Alolan Sandslash, in my personal opinion. I could be completely wrong about this, but I know that I've seen a lot of team comps run the both of them anyways with something crazy like a Medicham lead, and that is just absolutely bonkers team comp. It does so much damage. It is so good. It really is just a really solid team. Then we have the Alolan Ninetales. Alolan Ninetales is there because it's the other ice type that's just always kind of been good. It has a lot of good moves. It has good typing. It keeps Darks in check. It keeps the Flyers away at bay. Definitely a strong Pokemon for sure. And even with the Charm nerf, it still has Powder Snow, right? And with Powder Snow, it poses as a potential threat to Galarian Stunfisk, even though Stunfisk's Rock Slide is super effective against it. Stunfisk would actually have to commit energy, maybe even commit shields, and work extra hard to take away that Alolan Ninetales. I know some people will still run Charm on it because Charm just does so much damage, and I can respect that. Personally, I do think Powder Snow, is the better move as of the current moment. And speaking of other good Pokemon that should potentially be on the B tier list, I really want to make a spot for Umbreon on there as well. I've seen a lot of people running Umbreon recently. They're running Dark Pulse instead of Last Resort, which, I mean, I guess I can get. It's an Elite TM for a mid-tier Mon. But I see a lot of Umbreon in the Great League as well. It's just so tanky. It eats hits. It's a bulk monster. If you don't have an answer for it, it's just going to out-sustain your team. That's why it's there. You got to almost Avengers Assemble all your teammates to try and take that thing down because it just has so much tankage on it. It actually is kind of crazy. Another good Pokemon would be the Wobbuffet. Now, the only reason I bring up Wobbuffet and Sableye at all is because they both have the move Return. Because you want them purified, right? You want them to be shadows first, and then you want to purify them, and then run them in as purified mods. So you want Return on Wobbuffet, because Wobbuffet is just a super tank monster, kind of like Umbreon, but it also has Counter, and Counter uses are super good, because they are super effective to those ice types, and they also keep the steel types in check. And that is exactly why Vigoroth is here. Vigoroth is strong because he has Counter, he has Body Slam, two very good moves. Unfortunately, you're kind of stuck running Bulldozer, which is just a worse move from him. But for as of the most part, it doesn't matter. He still has such good moves and good stats. He just kind of rolls certain team comps. Really strong. Then we have Gliscor. Gliscor is one of those flyers that's there. If you partner him in the right team comp, he is an absolute menace to society. He has Night Slash, which can delete Medicham. He has Earthquake, which can definitely rough up things like Galarian Stunfisk and Alolan Sandslash. And him being I'm pretty sure he's a ground and flyer. He might be a rock and flyer, I'm not sure. He has a lot of good resistance as well. He just is a solid Pokemon, both regular and Shadow. I know a lot of people run the Shadow one. As of the current moment, I think the regular one is a bit better. Maybe. But then again, that's just kind of my opinion. It's still a really, really good Pokemon. Definitely can be run in the right team comp, but not every team comp. That goes same for Mantine. Mantine is kind of like the other version of Pelipper. If you don't have Pelipper, I'm kind of a little confused as to why, because of how good it is. But Mantine definitely can fit the bill. It has good moves. It's kind of the same thing as Pelipper. It just doesn't have quite as good as a heavy attack moveset, I'd say, as Pelipper. And for that reason, I think he's over there. Jellicent's a solid Pokemon. It has a lot of bulk. I've seen a lot more of it as the Great League was about to end. I've seen just a ton of it. It learning Surf definitely made it a stronger Pokemon. Shadow Ball is just a good generic move. And with Trevenant gone, the Pokemon has done nothing but grow, right? It has only gotten better. And there was a point in time where Jellicent was top tier meta, like a long, long, long time ago when it was like released or something like that. So it coming back is just kind of not that much of a surprise to me, seeing as it's definitely been seen in the past. Then we have Cresselia. Cresselia is just there because it has a lot of bulk. It's really tanky, and it has Grass Knot. I personally don't think it would be up on this list if it didn't have the move Grass Knot, because then it really wouldn't have a play here. It would still have play in the Ultra League, because there's actually Pokemon up there who get messed up by Cresselia's other moves and Psychic typing. But down here, I think the main reason it's good is because of Grass Knot, and Grass Knot messes up specific Water-type Pokemon like Quagsire, Whimscash, Swampert, Lantern, and on a good day, even Whaleren, which is just pretty big. Oh, and Jellicent, of course. But then we have Pidgeot, and Pidgeot is here because Feather Dance is a debuffing move, is really, really good, and Brave Bird, obviously, is just one of the best flying nukes in the game. It can get it faster than any other bird. It provides the most amount of stab. It's just absolutely crazy what Pidgeot can do if you align it correctly. And then last but never the least is Trevenant. So some people are still trying to make Trevenant work. Personally, I don't think he's as good as he was in the past. I definitely do feel like he's a lot slower. I do think that he has more play in the Ultra League now as opposed to the Great League, because the Ultra League is heavily reliant on Dragon, Ghost, and Steel types, right? And seeing as he is a Ghost and he was at such a high position up in the Ultra League before, and Ghost is still kind of good up there, he still rocks the Ultra League, right? Like, he still can do stuff. But I don't think Great League, there really is a spot for him anymore. I think it's time for him to remove the crown from his head. Very unfortunate at that, by the way. I was a Trevenant main for a long time, but I think it's finally time that we remove the crown and put it aside and put it onto someone else. That's pretty much going to be it as of the Great League. Oh, no, wait, Shadow Victory Bell. Shadow Victory Bell is kind of the mon that I would use to replace Trevenant. And if it's not Shadow Vic, it's got to be Megmium, as the one plant type that actually does stuff. Because between Megmium and Shadow Vic, both of them are really, really good. They deal a lot of damage. They are really, really glassy, though, so you have to be extremely careful with them. Some people will say, oh, what about Venusaur or Shadow Venusaur? I really think you're going to have more success with Victory Bell or particularly Megmium. Because with how heavy the ice types are in the meta as of the current moment, Shadow Venusaur and Shadow regular Venusaur are plant ice, and they take extra damage from ice types because of that typing. And there's just too many ice types in the meta as of the current moment, and mons that can learn ice types moves and are using them right now to really get that Pokemon to drive through efficiently. It's just very difficult. If you want to run it, be my guest, and you'll probably do good, but I personally would not use it once you hit towards the ace or higher levels, because I feel like you're just going to run into that double ice type in the back, right? Like with Dugong and Alolan Sandslash. But anyways, that's pretty much going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment. Or tell me what you think meta Pokemon should be up here. Tell me what you would like to see here in the future. I'm open ears and I am willing to hear, and I'll see if I can try to respond to you. See you in the next one.